In this episode of ICS Connects, I'm talking to Anh Nguyen, a movement of event professionals that check out different event platforms and see how far they can go with them. So listen in and let's explore the future of exchange. Hello everyone and welcome back to ICS Connects. I'm here today with Anh Nguyen, the principal at Spark Event Management and the co-founder of Event Profs Breakshit. Welcome to ICS Connects, Anh.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good. And for the people that don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what Spark Event is, and then we go into Event Profs Breakshit.
Sure. So like you said, I own a company called Spark Event Management. We're based out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Prior to COVID, we were doing sort of live event and conference production management, sort of full scale event management support for our clients. And still doing some of that right now, mostly online and virtually moving their events to a digital format, like many event professionals around the world. So been doing that for about 9 years with Spark, and have worked in the industry for about 15 years. Event Profs Breakshit is sort of something that spun out during the pandemic when we started testing event technology and noticing a little bit of a gap between how event professionals want to test and research event technology versus how it's being sold to us. So yeah, kind of started out from that little idea and has just starting to take off a little bit. So excited to talk about it.
Perfect. So tell me a little bit more about that. So what is the big disconnect between how a virtual platform is being presented and what we as event professionals need?
Yeah, so what I started to notice when, like everyone else, when COVID happened and we were moving everything online, all of a sudden you're being inundated with hundreds of event technology platforms, all sort of promising different things, saying, we can do this better than the other and all this. And what I found was the best way for me to test that was to actually go to an event or experience the platform for myself, which, if you know, is not actually a thing that they make very easy to do. So, from tech mentality, the idea is get the customer into the pipeline, get their contact info, get them on a demo, talk them through your demo script, and then tell them that it's $40,000, right, when they're on the call with you. So after myself and a few of our colleagues started experiencing this sort of over and over, there started to be some discontent, or maybe not discontent, but just frustration from event professionals on how do I find a platform that works for my event without going through this, times 10, 15, 20 times per client. So it kind of started, we discovered a platform called YoTribe. And like any planner, the first question we asked was, you say that you can do sort of virtual networking, and what's the capacity, how many rooms can you do, and how many people per room? Pretty standard kind of first question you would ask a platform like that. And they said it was unlimited. And I just didn't believe them. I was like, that seems really hard to do with unlimited scaling of video technology. So I just put out a tweet and I asked some of my event prof friends to join and see if we could test this capacity and break it. And the response was really overwhelming. So event professionals answered in the tune of 200 to 300 people signed up, about 170 showed up, and we broke it. It wasn't unlimited. It actually was at 45 people, the room broke, and we had to start a new room. And they were really great. YoTribe was, they hadn't asked for this, and I'm sure in the background they were like, this is not the greatest way for us to launch this, but they received, what we did was we collected pages of just candid grassroots feedback from these people, and we just sent them the document. It was like, 150 event professionals were on your platform, here are the things that they would change. That's kind of how it started. So we have created a way for event professionals to sort of test event tech together by actually experiencing the event. And in exchange, the tech companies get a bunch of exposure for, people seeing their platform, and they get all of this sort of feedback. So if they're in beta phase, it's really helpful for them to improve their product.
Has that become the main kind of like purpose of the movement now, or have you
Yes.
expanded since then?
Yeah. So that Yo Tribe one was sort of pre the development of the brand and all of that. So then we realized so then after that Yo Tribe event, we were being called probably weekly by different event tech companies that were like, come break our stuff. So we created this, and right now we've only done one official event a couple weeks ago where we was branded under the Event Profs Break Shit banner. And that is right now the main goal of it, is just to provide a place where tech companies can bring their platforms to be tested or broken, and event professionals test it as a community. So in and of itself, creating sort of a little virtual event that we can participate in, to actually see what the platform looks like, if we were an attendee. So what our attendees would see if we were to, let's say, purchase this platform and use it for our event.
So how did this event go? Because kind of it's quite different when you kind of go in and you break as a platform,
Yes.
kind of like unknowing to the platform itself that you're trying to do
Yeah.
that, and now you have them being on board. So
Yes.
how is that different?
Yeah, so Lawrence Coburn from Twine, the former founder and creator of Double Dutch, was such a fantastic first kind of case. So he was completely on board with unleashing 200 event professionals onto his software, and fairly confident in their ability to handle it. So he worked with us to help kind of design the event and the onboarding process, and they were engaged in terms of providing technical support. And we broke it. he would definitely say that we broke it. We ran into some technical issues, and they were great in terms of responding and being engaged in the process. But it was good for him to see, and he received all of the feedback that they have since taken and are going to make changes to their platform. And I think that's the key, right? Like, it has to be the right technology provider that participates in this. You have to kind of be ready for anything, and you sort of have to be open to feedback. And we don't do it in sort of a malice or cruel way. Like, we just go in, we use it, and we provide feedback, and it's very respectable. But it's not like a demo, right? You can't walk us through a predetermined fixed path and show us the features that you only want to show us. And the rule is you sort of have to let us loose on it. So even when we were setting up the registration, I was having issues with it. And I told Lawrence, I was like, well, this is up to you, right? Like, we're not getting involved in the technical support of this, because if that's how your onboarding process works, you want people to experience it and break it, essentially. Yep. So you have to definitely be the right provider and the right software company. It's not for everyone. We get that. But yeah, so far the folks that have signed up and have inquired have been really open to the idea of just letting us loose and letting us, break shit.
Good.
Yeah.
So tell me, who are the breakers? Like, who are the people that kind of like go with you on this, like that followed you on your Twitter, kind of like shout out and kind of work, come on and break the platforms, the shit with you?
Yeah, that's the beauty of it, right? It's not a fixed group of people. We've created a little bit of a community, in the sense that, so Miguel Neves and Sean Chang helped me create it. So we've sort of founded the thing together, but it is completely grassroots. It's completely grassroots, and it's completely organic, in the sense that you don't have to commit to a number of sessions. You don't have to sign up for, lifelong membership in anything. You don't have to pay anything. You just, if the event works for you, then you register for it and you come on. So it started with about, like I said, 200 people that signed up for the Yo Tribe thing, another 150 that signed up for the Twine thing, and then just some people that have signed up on our website to stay up to date on our event schedule. So we have created sort of a community of 450 just regular event professionals like me. Like, I think the biggest thing is that was frustrating to me was, if it was overwhelming for a professional event planner to source and test technology, think about, you know, the executive assistant who has one summit that she plans every year, and now all of a sudden it has to be online. Or if you're the executive director of an association and you have 900 other things to do, and now you have to find a way to move your conference online. And like, imagine how overwhelming it is for those folks, right? But just to make it fun and easier, and that sense of community is a big part of it, and a big part of our industry, right, is doing things together and doing things as a group and sharing experiences, which I think is what's so powerful about it.
I think it's so important, because I feel, especially what you said right now, kind of like from a client side, from the people that actually kind of like are in associations and so on, we often see much more rudimentary problems.
Totally.
Issues like, why would I still need an event planner involved if I already have the platform? Like, okay, you start at a level where kind of the understanding of where a platform starts kind of with their servicing and what's not included anymore,
Yeah.
kind of like is already unclear. So going to the details of the platform is definitely not something that most people are equipped to handle. So I think this is great.
Yeah. And I think, you know, this is really platform centric, but that whole idea of educating our clients that the platform is like your venue, right? Like you still need to do all the strategy and planning and thinking about your goals and objectives before you hop in and buy a platform or subscribe to something. And I think the pandemic certainly instigated maybe some panic and some urgency to just like, I need to move my event, and I need to move it to something, and I've heard of XYZ. But the idea that, you know, all of that event design and strategy and planning still has to happen, and how we fit into it as planners is key. So anything we can do to kind of remove the how, you know, intimidating it is to take your event and design it online can only help, right? So there's lots of people in our community that aren't professional event planners, you know, people that work for organizations and that have other things on their plate right now, but they just they can dial into an hour-long event and see how the platform actually works and experience it. And and I think about, they're not immersed in it like we are, right? So it's like, you know, like you said, the problems they're dealing with are really, really simple sometimes. And just to see it is like, oh, yeah, okay, this is how these things work and how it flows and what it feels like as an attendee.
How global is the movement? Like, kind of like
how... I love that you keep calling it a movement.
Well, what do you want me to call it? Movement? Like,
because it's not really. It's very interesting because it started so earnestly and honestly out of like a need that we saw, right?
Well, if you have 400 people, you can call yourself a movement. I know people.
Okay, let's call it a movement.
Yeah.
If you want to, it's a movement. It's a movement. It's pretty global. Like part of, you know, what has helped us is Miguel, Sean, and I were really instrumental in the GMID Goes Virtual event back in April. So from that, we built a very global kind of social media following. So social media also, you know, one of the benefits of this whole pandemic is how connected we are now. Time zones don't matter, geography doesn't matter, you know, like, you know, you can connect with anyone. That there's people from all over. It's heavily based out of Europe and US, actually, more than Canadian representation, which is interesting because Sean and I are based in Canada, but Miguel has a really strong influence over in Europe, and we have a harder time with sort of the Asia, South Asia side, just because of the time zone differences. Like our events are usually morning for us, evening for Europe, but then it's like the middle of the night. But the reach isn't limited by any means, and anyone anywhere can sort of jump on and do this. So the hope is that with each event that we do, we sort of grow the movement.
So how tell us, like, if anybody's interested in joining one of your events and so on, how can they do that?
Yeah, so we are aiming to sort of do one every sort of 3-4 weeks, like almost monthly, keeping the momentum of this last one going. So our next one is hopefully going to be the week of September 20th. And we're just in talks with a tech company about breaking it. And we have a website, so eventprofsbreakshit.com. It's very, very basic. It just kind of has an overview of the idea and an option for people to sign up for our mailing list so that they can stay, they can get their invite when we launch the next event. So it's easy to remember, eventprofsbreakshit.com.
Good.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's
Yeah.
good to know. So let's change gears just slightly and talk about kind of the platforms that you're kind of testing. What are you looking for in a platform? Like with you kind of like having looked into lots of different options now and different platforms out there, what is it that you're looking for in a platform? What would you say makes a good platform?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think I'll flip it back to my analogy of venues, right? Like that would be very similar to you saying, what's the best venue in the world kind of thing. And it really kind of depends on what you're doing with your event and what the objectives are and how you want your attendees to engage in it. Like what the ones we've been testing on Event Profs Break Shit focus a little more heavily on sort of the virtual networking component. I think there's lots of big box brands and big platforms that have really mastered the idea of content delivery. So, just getting speeches and contents and presentations. But where I think people are still looking for something is how to recreate that sort of serendipity and that networking and the casual connections that happen at online or at live events. That the couple that we've tested so far, and likely the next one, will still kind of focus on that networking component and how you make it feel like you're in a room meeting people for the first time, right? Because that's, I think, the hardest part to recreate online. But so the more difficult things about the bigger platforms where they're all in, virtual event experience from head to tail is there's a little bit more event design that has to go into that. So even though we're relatively casual and going in there to break something, once you start testing platforms that specialize in full conference experience, you have to design something for people to come in, right? Like Yo Tribe was easy because people can just come in and network, but those other platforms require a little bit more work on our end to design something worthwhile for people to log in, because I can't break your virtual event platform if there's no content, right? Like you just log in and it's like, oh, okay, this looks nice. But but I think I get asked that a lot, is like, what do you recommend for a virtual event platform? And it's like, well, there's so many different factors that go into that, right? Your budget, your objectives, your audience, so.
Any standouts yet that you had where you say, wow, this really impressed me, or there was something that really kind of stood out to me that's different? Or do you feel it's all one of the same? I mean, I don't need you to kind of promote any
Right.
particular platform now. It's more kind of like we all go through this, and it's kind of like to use the venue analogy, it's all kind of like same ballrooms, different carpet.
Right.
But is there anything that we say this stands out that is really different?
Yeah, I think, exactly. Same ballroom, different carpet, but look at the platforms that are being a little bit more engaged and creative about the way that they're growing and developing their product with the marketplace, right? So I really appreciate all the work that Corey's doing over at Socio. She's not just pushing out the same thing over. She's getting very creative about how she markets it. She's generating content on her platform from the end users. They've done a couple hackathons and things like that. But I think don't worry so much about the technical features right off the bat, right? Look for organizations that understand how dynamic and ever-changing the process of planning a virtual event is, and how they can work with you on that, right? Like for me personally, it's way more important to be able to have an open dialogue with my vendor saying, I know you didn't design this to do this, but here's like some of the things that I would like to see, or I would like to change. And organizations that are flexible enough to go on that journey with you, I think is important, because I think we're just like at the tip of the iceberg of what digital platforms can do. That any organization that you run into that's very stringent and strict about having to fit your event into this box, it's going to be tough, right? Because things are constantly changing, and the whole introduction of now that you can supplement some of your online stuff with in-person events and moving towards more of a hybrid model. anyone that says, you know, this is like the all-in solution and it's going to solve all of your problems and you can just take your event and put it in this box, I don't think that's going to work very long.
And I do think you mentioned, like what you mentioned right now is extremely important, because from our side, what we've had experience so far with virtual events is the issue was usually on the service side of most of those platforms, and this kind of willingness to work with you and adapt. I mean, there is a bit, companies are quite overwhelmed right now with the requests that came in, right? So it's understandable, but that's definitely the biggest bottleneck that we see is on the service and on the people side. And I feel what you said here is such an important kind of thing for people to remember, like the way you work with people and people that understand your vision is extremely important. It's not just about technology. It's also about kind of like, do we know what we're trying to achieve here? And are you on the same page as I am on this?
Yeah. And even if you're not on the same page, are we willing to like work together to figure something out? It's, you know, back to this venue analogy, it would be like if a venue was like, you can't set the room up the other way. It has to be like this, and all the chairs are locked here forever. And you would be like, okay, like that seems like an odd restriction, but you know, the technology will have its limitations, but the idea of that we're not, and that's why the technology companies that sign up for event Profs break shit are great, right? So Lawrence was like, oh man, XYZ on my product obviously doesn't work very well. So I'm going to go back and redevelop it and change it so that it's more user friendly, because it's all about the end user.
And that's what you do, right? You don't just check, because we started off with checking, can you actually host the capabilities that you promise, or do you actually have the bandwidth that you promise? But now you go deeper into kind of, does this actually kind of like fulfill my networking needs? Does it actually do all of those things? You don't just check bandwidth anymore, right? You don't just try.
Lawrence is a great example, because his whole vision behind Twine is to create deeper community, and he calls it engineered serendipity. So you're matched up with someone and you talk to them about a topic that means a lot to both of you, and he just wants to figure out the best way to do that, right? It doesn't matter what the code says or what the technology says, but a really simple thing, like they had this 2-minute check-in window. And so of 150 people that signed up, 70 people missed that 2-minute check-in window. So that's like, I'm not a coder, but I imagine that's like relatively easy to change on the back end, where it's like maybe give people a little bit longer time. And until people use your platform in the masses, it's really hard to get statistically significant data, right? But if I can tell you that on average, half of the people are going to miss that 2-minute window, that's something that he's willing to go change. And all of a sudden it's a better experience for his users, and more people are getting exposed to the software. So I think that attitude, like you said, is way more important than, you know, they can send you a spec sheet that has 900 features, but it's like, until you're in it and building your event and you're like, oh shoot, I didn't ask them about this, but it would be really helpful if I could do XYZ, and someone that you can call or whatever that says, yeah, let us help you. Let us look into that. And, you know, you're not the first person that has asked that, for example. Let us work on it. And I think that's also important for event professionals, is like, just ask for things, because these companies are so new, right? That they don't even know half of the features that they don't have. So unless they're hearing it from us that it's like, oh, it's important that this thing does XYZ, they likely haven't even thought about that, because like you said, they're so overwhelmed with just trying to keep up.
So, and kind of, let's go into even a bigger kind of like view of things. We're testing all those platforms right now, and kind of really kind of so engaged in the virtual kind of side of event management, conference management. Where do you think the industry as a whole will go? Kind of like, where are we going? Kind of like, what's your idea? Kind of, you run your own company, you prepare for something. Like, where are we going to be, say, by 2024? How will virtual play a role, and what is it that a meeting planner really needs to understand and be able to do? I know. I didn't say it's going to be easy.
Like crystal ball. Well, I'll be 41, so I was hoping to be retired. But I think that, there's been some great articles put out in the last few weeks about like the team over at Skift and Rafat put out an article about how this is like our Napster moment, right? So I don't think that the event industry is dead by any means, but it will change. And I think, like I said, we've almost mastered the ability to deliver content digitally. So thinking about how that component of your event is going to be streamlined, on demand, potentially, that attendees don't need to physically travel to a ballroom anymore to hear the content. It's now being digested at their own pace, at their own timing, however they want. That creating the experiences around that to encourage people to still go in person to connect with others and to experience, whether it's the destination or what you've physically created, when we can. This whole idea that events have shifted their focus from no longer being about content delivery. And in the world of conferences, it's like the bread and butter of what I do, right? Like, come get your PDUs by listening to these 8 hours of content. Now they can do that wherever, whenever, for much cheaper. Thinking about, the creativity and the human design and experience and that side of why someone would get on a plane, fly somewhere, spend 3 days, in a hotel, all of that kind of stuff. That's going to be really critical if you want to keep your event, alive, I'll say. So both figuring out how to get your content in digestible forms that people can, use wherever, and then still creating a draw, whether it's the location or how you design your event so that people still want to attend in person, is going to be pretty key, right? So I think looking at what the entertainment industry has done, and I was talking to someone about the idea that virtual events are going to be eligible for Emmys now, because look at, some of the things that like Tomorrowland and the DNC and all of that, where they've taken these virtual events and turned them into massive entertainment productions. That line is so blurry now, right? That really thinking about why someone needs to be somewhere in person and everything that they now have to give up in order to do that, I think will be important for how we could keep people meeting. Yeah, so I don't know what
I'm not
the
sure.
answer
Like,
is.
that's a very good question. I kind of like the Emmy thing because it gives me other thoughts. Like the Napster example, I'm not sure I love that so much. But you look at how theater goes into cinema and cinema goes to Netflix, right? That might be a much more applicable comparison, because people still go to the theater. Broadway is still full. Like, it's still hard to get tickets for a good show, even though you can probably get a much better production, much more flawless on Netflix.
I think
Right?
the entertainment industry is a huge example for us, right? So, like Hamilton is a good example. That's a great example where it's like, I paid a whole bunch of money to fly to New York and sit in these like obstructed view, and it was tiny and uncomfortable, but to be there live watching it was so different than when it came out on Disney Plus. You're excited about it, but I couldn't even watch the whole thing, right? Because it's like, well, I can't watch 3 hours of this. I've already seen it, but it doesn't captivate and engage you the same way. And what is that about Broadway that does that versus watching it on TV in your basement, right? And that's kind of the magic and the design that we have to figure out, because all of the content is going to be available online. I'm going to be able to get all of my PDUs by turning this webinar on and leaving it running. But like, why am I going to go to this conference? So I think that's a really good example of what we need to think about.
And let's make that our goal then, to create such exciting events that it's worthwhile getting on a plane for 3, 7, 17 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And this was fantastic. I really appreciate your time this morning to talk to me and introduce us to eventprofsbreakshit.com.
Yes. Eventprofsbreakshit.com. Sign up for the newsletter. We'll let you know when the next event is.
Thank you so much. And thanks for joining me. And thanks everyone for listening.